Today's story is about the Travis Walton UFO incident. Now, if you guys have not heard of this or you haven't seen the movie, I actually feel sorry for you because it is that good. I mean, if you don't believe me, go watch the movie. It's called Fire in the Sky, and read the book. Both amazing. And remember guys, I'm just learning some of this stuff, so any suggestions you have for how I can make my videos better, I would love to hear them. And by the way, every single like, comment, share, subscribe, everything counts. I really appreciate every single one of them. So if you do hit subscribe, make sure and hit the bell so you don't miss any uploads for this channel. This was an alleged alien abduction of a lumberjack named Travis Walton that happened on November 5th, 1975. This happened while he and a crew were downing trees in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. This location is right next to Snowflake, Arizona. Now, this guy was missing for 5 days plus, and the authorities sent out helicopters, dogs, search teams. I mean, it was a huge ordeal. And according to Walton, after that, he just showed up out of nowhere alongside of a road in Heber, Arizona. Now, the attention this story has received has been immense, and it is still, to this day, one of the most well-known alien-related incidents ever. Now, of course, many people still think this is a hoax, but you know, what else is new? There's always both sides of the story. Now, if you think this is just another everyday alien story with no kind of proof or anything to back it up, think again. This actually happened while he was riding in the truck with 6 other people. So you're talking 7 people that saw this right in front of their own eyes. And they all said that they all saw a saucer-shaped object hovering over the ground about 100 feet away. And they all said that it was making a high-pitched buzzing sound. Walton decided to get out of the truck, even though all his friends were saying, don't do that, come back here, and stuff like that, and approach the object. And he said when he did, a light came shooting down out of the craft and knocked him unconscious. Now, not really surprisingly, all the other people in the truck were so terrified, they just drove away. He says the next thing he remembered is awaking in a room that was sort of like a hospital, being watched over by 3 short, bald creatures. Now, he says that he had a fight with these creatures until a human wearing a helmet came in and led him into another room. And this is the part that he claimed he blacked out because 3 other humans put some sort of plastic thing over his face. Now, Walton says he does not remember anything else until he awoke 5 days later at the side of the road with this craft taking off above him. Now get this, soon after, he and his crew were awarded $5,000 by a magazine for the best UFO case of the year. But guess why? They all passed lie detector tests. Now, how many UFO cases do you know of where 7 people pass a polygraph test? Now, you gotta understand, for 5 days, the authorities thought that this guy was murdered by his coworkers, and then he just shows up perfectly fine. It's also important to point out that every single person that was there and saw the spacecraft, as I said, took polygraphs and passed, except one was inconclusive initially. Just initially. And it is theorized that the only reason it was inconclusive initially is because he had fights with Walton, so he was nervous. Now, it's also worth mentioning that a few people think that there's really bad discrepancies as to why Walton supposedly held his breath while he was taking the polygraph test, and the tests were poorly administered and all kinds of other things, but that does not explain how everyone else passed their polygraph tests. Now, 3 years after the incident, in 1978, Walton wrote his book, The Walton Experience, which in turn became the basis for the movie Fire in the Sky that came out in 1993. I would definitely suggest checking out the book and the movie. For Paramount Pictures, Tracy Torme wrote this movie. It's not going to be an exact account, word for word, because that's how movies work. People always change it a little bit to fit the needs for the movie, but you have to see the movie still. It's amazing. Travis Walton has appeared at UFO conventions on television. He actually sponsors his own UFO conference in Arizona. It's called the Skyfire Summit. On the opening day of Fire in the Sky in 1993, Travis Walton and Mike Rogers went on the show with Larry King Live to do a special. Now, many years later, Walton appeared on the Fox game show The Moment of Truth. And on the show, he was given another polygraph test. This time, he failed. Now, you tell me, how is it that 7 people pass a polygraph test, and then all these years later, he fails this one? What's going on here? Seems strange to me. One of the newest things that he appeared on, January 19th, 2021, he came on the Joe Rogan Experience, so I would say go check that out as well. Now, when this happened to Travis Walton, he was only 21 years old, and supposedly the beam that came out of this craft threw him 40 feet in the air. And obviously, when they saw that, like I said, they left. What would you do in this situation? Who knows? I mean, I know I would be scared. There has to be something really special and crazy and creepy about this story because it's still messing with people's minds close to 50 years later. Oh, and by the way, the one person that didn't pass the polygraph, it was inconclusive, later on, he had another test by the same state examiner and passed. The president of the American Polygraph Association said that the odds of that many people passing a test in error is over 1,000,000 to 1. It took Walton years to come up with this idea, but now he thinks that what the aliens were actually doing to him was trying to save his life. He thinks that that burst of energy that came out of the craft injured him and they were merely trying to correct that damage. Walton is not bothered by the skeptics. There was also a person named Emery Smith who is a U.S. Air Force scientist and medical researcher who agreed with his theory. Many years later, Walton was asked, why did he get out of the truck when he saw this thing hovering maybe 20 feet above the clearing? And he said, I was just awestruck by the beauty of this thing that I saw. I didn't really appreciate the danger of the situation I was in. And he was also asked, what did he think? Did he fault these people for leaving him when he was possibly in great danger? And he said no. He said they were unarmed, so for them to actually come back that soon to try to help me was a little bit heroic. He's like, it really just showed common sense. What could they do? This craft shot this blue-green beam of light at him, knocked him however many feet in the air, unconscious, and they thought they would all die probably, so that's why they left. They ventured about a quarter mile down the road and came back after this craft had left, but he was gone. And just to be fair, to show both sides of it, there were people who were theorizing, well, you know what, they were under contract, and if they didn't get this thing done, get all those trees down by a certain deadline, they would have been docked 10% on their contract. So they were thinking maybe this person made up this whole story to try to make money, and get themselves out of a tight spot. While these young men were out here working all these trees, trying to get everything done, trying to get it all cut down and done by a certain time, I mean, they were probably stressed to the max. They were out there late, it was dark, it's hard to know what you'd do if you saw that, But the driver of the truck expressed that they shouldn't have left, and he didn't think it was heroic. At one time, these men were asked, how long did it take you to get back to normal? Well, basically the answer was, we never did. Maybe we'll never get back to normal completely, but we're doing what we can. At the time of the incident, about 8 out of 10 people in the town were basically telling them, we don't believe you. But it's not really that way anymore, because a lot of other people supposedly have had their own experiences in that area, so more and more people are starting to believe them. The level of skepticism kind of went down. Now, Rogers and Walton both don't like all this celebrity, the fame, the attention, everything. They don't like it. But Walton has said that he feels like he has some sort of a level of responsibility for other people that have went through this. He feels like he needs to be able to share his story so other people will feel comfortable sharing theirs as well. Walton must be a brave guy. He still lives in that area. Now, this guy right here, I don't think I would be living there. I think I'd be moving far away. Everybody reacts to things in different ways. Now, Rogers has said that he feels like this experience should have created a bond between all of them, but instead, they sort of all scattered. And one of the people actually changed his name and hid out for 30 years. Another thing that lends credence to the story is the fact that a group of hunters years later told Walton that they also were there that night in the same general area and saw the lights of the spacecraft as well. Incidentally, the logging road that they came in on when this happened has now been decommissioned by the Forestry Service. One of them went back to the site of where this happened alone at night and said it was spooky. Yeah, you think so? The 7-man crew that this happened to consisted of Alan Dallas, 21, Travis Walton, 22, John Goulet, 21, Ken Peterson, 26, Dwayne Smith, 21, Steve Pierce, who was 17, and Mike Rogers, the crew leader, 28. Alan Dallas is the one that was in an agitated state, as I mentioned, and subsequently failed the polygraph because it had misunderstandings and disagreements with Walton and felt nervous because of that. Now, Travis Walton was put under regressive hypnosis, where he was able to recount that he saw 2 types of alien beings and recount the interior of the spacecraft. And get this, Walton was given a polygraph test and a voice stress test. And guess what they indicated? That he was telling the truth and was mentally stable. After the initial call was made to the authorities from one of the loggers to tell them what happened, they thought, well, just a typical missing person thing, we'll go over and check it out. Sheriff Marlon Gillespie and Deputy Ken Copeland were the first ones to drive over. When they started asking what happened, they all tried to talk over each other, just because of the excitement of the craziness of the situation. Well, this just made it seem even more unbelievable. During the manhunt, Mike ran into these people that had Geiger counters that were searching around. He suggested that they run the Geiger counters over the crew. Didn't turn up anything because they had all showered and changed clothes by then. But then he had the idea, hey, check our hard hats. So they went and checked the hard hats with the Geiger counters, and the needle went crazy. So then very soon after that, those people with Geiger counters left. Nobody knew who they were. Soon after the polygraphs were administered, Travis showed up on the side of the road. Not long after that, Dr. Kandel believed that his behavior was consistent with someone who had been through a lot of trauma. He did all kinds of tests on him, blood work and everything else. Couldn't find any signs of different blood chemistry, drugs in his system, or anything like that. In fact, the only thing they did find was the site of an injection or a possible injection on his arm. They think maybe that's where he was being fed intravenously. He had still lost around 10 pounds in those 5 days. Even though tons and tons of people have asked these men many times over for all these years, what happened to you? They all ask the same question. Ever since 1975, none of these people have wavered from their story. Guys, I just had an awesome idea. Maybe we should all get together and go to Arizona and see where this happened. Yeah, no, I'm not going. When Travis Walton was asked specifically what he saw when he got out of the truck, he said it was a classic disc shape, and it was giving off sort of a soft golden haze that would illuminate the area around it. And he said at one point he actually got between 8 to 10 feet from this craft, and he was hiding behind a log. Well, when he jumped up to go back to the truck, that's when this energy field or whatever it was hit him. And then it might have been something along the lines of an energy discharge that grounded out through him because he was so close. And there have been people that say that the movie is not entirely accurate. So if you want to get the full story, I would do your own research and read the book and watch the movie and kind of take it all in. Travis Walton has also been quoted as saying that he and other people have also seen other craft in different shapes, such as a tic-tac shape, a giant black triangle, a sphere of light. He said when he got close, he could notice that some of the areas of the craft were glowing in this gold kind of color, but other areas were sort of dark. It wasn't too bright to look at. He said it was a very eerie, very strange, unexplainable gold light source. Not like beams of light shooting out or anything like that. They also recounted that this thing gave off some sort of a low, thunderous sound that you almost felt more than you would actually hear. And it would also give off these higher frequencies, and the volume of these things would increase as it started to move. Regardless if there's any correlation between this and the craft, it is very interesting to note that this area has the second highest frequency of lightning strikes in the entire continental United States. Is that related in some way to the power source of this craft? Was it just there to study these lightning strikes? Your guess is as good as mine. Do you think that they were there with the intention to kidnap him and do tests on him, or was he just too close and they tried to help him out? Let me know what you think. Now, there have been people that have seen these crafts as well and have said that the surface of them almost looks like it's fluid or in motion or alive. But the way it was described by Travis Walton, it was metallic. So that kind of doesn't make sense together. What do you guys think? Although he may not have actually said it word for word, Travis Walton himself kind of alluded to the idea that he might have been completely out of the solar system when this was happening, when he was on the craft. He said at one point he could see outside of the craft, but he could not see any sort of sun, planets, or anything that he was familiar with. He could see plenty of stars, but nothing else. Walton's abduction was actually the first one in history that had ever been reported while the person was still missing. And he started getting so many phone calls from other people that had been abducted too, he had to shut off his phone for about a decade. Now, if you are personally amongst the people that do not believe in this, I would definitely suggest checking out the book called UFOs, The Public Deceived. It was written in 1983 by Philip J. Klass. Reportedly, Travis Walton's brother initially did not believe in the story and thought that maybe he was just murdered. So he actually went to the site, the area where they were clearing out these trees, and per their contract they were making huge piles of these trees to be burned later, and he started tearing these things apart, thinking that he was going to find his brother's body in one of these piles of trees. Well, that caused some big fights between people, and obviously he was never found there. Several members of Travis Walton's family were actually into the whole UFO phenomenon, and that made people cast doubt on them. But Philip Klass was one of the people that had the theory that this whole thing was cooked up to get out of the logging contract. When Mike Rogers heard about this, he said it was, quote, BS. So obviously we have a story here that has way too many details to be all covered in one short YouTube video such as this. But what do I think about it? Half of me wants to say, there's no way. But the other half of me says, all those people passed a polygraph? Maybe it did happen. So what do you guys think? Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Do it all for me, please. Please don't forget to click the bell, and that way you will not miss any of my uploads. I really hope you guys enjoyed this story. This thing has been really fun to research, and I love the books and the films and documentaries and all the stuff. I think you guys will too. So, see you next time.